Hey folks, welcome to Horsemanship 101 again today. It's just below freezing, overcast, pretty windy outside, so we're going to hide in the shelter of the tack shed here and talk about saddle pads today. I'm going to jump right into different materials that they make them out of. If you've ever walked into a tack shop, the selection is rather overwhelming. Prices can vary anywhere from about $30 to $160 in the one I go to. And the materials and the sizes, the shapes, the thicknesses, there's just an abundance of selection, and it can be very, very overwhelming. So I'm just going to run through a little bit on some things. There's some rather expensive ones out there that, as far as I'm concerned, are much more of a gimmick than anything else because they have the gel-filled, foam-filled, air ride, various ones like that. And the big problem with those or any other saddle pad made out of any kind of synthetic material, particularly the ones where you have a sealed chamber like that in them, is they don't breathe at all. They will make your horse sweat. They will make your horse hot. Even a fabric one, if it's made out of a synthetic material, it will still not wick away material properly. It will breathe a little bit. It's not as bad, but it's certainly not as good as the ultimate best is felt. The only other one that may be acceptable is your typical Navajo blanket. Some people will use just those under their saddle, and that can only be done if you got a really good fitting saddle to begin with, because they're not very thick, as you can see, and some of them actually are made out of a synthetic material. They aren't even a natural fabric. If you're going to buy one, make sure it's a natural fabric, and oddly enough, as simple as these things are, they're actually rather pricey for what you get. Some of the other options are there are various kinds of felt. Felt comes in different qualities. You got to watch because there's pure, what they call hospital grade felt, which is the white. That's what you're going to find in a lot of them. It's not the cheapest, but they're not horribly expensive either, and you can also get it in a variety of thicknesses. And I'll talk about that in a second too. This is a lower grade felt, but it is still a natural felt. It's not a synthetic. And as thin as it is, it can also be trimmed off so you can make it fit nicely around your saddle. Don't have a bunch of extra sticking out flapping around. A bit of an advantage to that. But again, it's quite thin, very inexpensive. This one I think was probably one of the cheapest ones they had in the store at the time. And, again, because of the thinness, make sure you've got a very good fit on your saddle before you consider putting one of these under. Something else to consider when it comes to fit is, I also use another pad here. This one is actually a combined Navajo blanket and felt pad together. It's actually permanently attached, which is kind of nice because some people actually like to take the Navajo blanket and put it over top of the saddle pad too. Now, I won't bother with that because it's just too much work and one more thing to mess around with, so I won't bother with that. And I'll talk about some of the disadvantages of doing that in a minute too. But something you have to consider, and it goes along with doubling up, putting extra layers on, and the thickness of your pad, you have to be very, very considerate of the thickness you're using and your saddle fit, because as you can see, looking at the end of this one, from the end here, the gullet on the saddle all of a sudden is smaller and narrower as soon as you put a thicker pad in. A thinner pad changes the fit less. A thicker pad is going to significantly change the fit of your saddle. So don't think that putting a thicker pad on is going to be nice to the horse and more comfortable for the horse. It may actually make things worse because it's going to alter the fit of your saddle considerably. It's going to change the shape because all of a sudden you're adding a half to 3/4 of an inch to the inside of your saddle, and that will significantly change how it fits on the horse. So take that into consideration. Something else that some people like to use and is an option that I don't like, but this is actually, even though it's a dark one, it's a fairly natural fabric felt, but what this has is it's actually got some pouches on it that you can slip various thicknesses of shims into to alter how your saddle fits on your horse. Now, I don't like it because I don't think that that's the solution to your problem, and all reports that I've read say that this is not a good way to solve a bad saddle fit by shimming it, and there's different kinds of pads you can get with shims that go into various places. Not a good idea. Get a saddle that fits properly in the first place. Don't play around with saddle pads to make it fit the horse. Now, if you've got a multiple of horses, sometimes just using a different thickness of pad will make the saddle fit better onto the various horses, but again, I like to have a saddle that fits the horse properly in the first place, and taking into consideration the saddle pad that I want to use. I do like to use, thicker is better. These are relatively thick, not bad. The one I use under my own saddle here, it's quite thick too. And again, felt is a natural fabric. The higher grade, it comes, like I say, you can buy felt in different grades. It's not all the same. Not all felt is the same. Generally, the white felt is the better quality felt with all natural fabric in it. It's not a blend. Some felts are actually a blend of synthetics and natural fabrics. And the natural fabric by far works better for keeping the moisture off the horse's back, wicking it out, allowing the back to breathe, and helping to keep your horse cool and comfortable. And that is a major consideration. So ultimately, the felt pad is the best. Hospital grade is the best grade of felt you can buy. Usually it comes in white, as an easy way to tell just by glancing at it. Otherwise, it's actually labeled. There are different grades of felt. Do some research on it, look it up. There's actually several different grades of felt, and there's ways of identifying it. You can also spend a lot of money on a pad that they have ones that are curved. Well, this one actually has a bit of a curve to it already because just because it's been on the horse so much, it's developed a curve to it. But you can actually buy them with a curve. You can buy them with a little hole in here, a breather hole that goes up at the front. There's a number of variations on them. Unfortunately, some of those ones that I think are actually a really nice pad are also somewhere in the neighborhood of about $160, and I don't think you need to pay that much. These ones like this, I believe this particular one runs somewhere in the neighborhood of about $60 or $70. You're not going to get off, dirt cheap, but don't cheap out too much because it's worth it to make your horse comfortable and to provide something that's going to wick away moisture and help keep your horse cool and dry when you're riding it. Again, like I said, you can, depending on the fit of your saddle, you can get away with different things. Anything from just a Navajo blanket to a very thin felt to a thick, felt Navajo blanket combination. But all of it has to do with how your saddle fits in the first place. And by all means, stay away from synthetic fabrics. They don't breathe. They will not allow any air circulation on the back of the horse. If it's any of the fancy schmancy ones that are usually quite pricey actually, with the gel or the air bags in them or anything like that, don't even consider them, because in order to be sealed like that, they're not going to allow your horse to breathe, and the horse's back is going to get very hot and sweaty, and then when you take it off, it's going to go roll in the mud, it's all going to stick. Again, the ones with the shims in them, I don't like them. I don't think it's a great idea. I think it's far better off to properly fit the saddle to your horse in the first place, and that takes care of that problem. But yeah, here's another example of one of the ones that's got the curve to the back, that fits onto the horse. They're made this way, but you usually end up paying a lot more money for them, and I'm not sure that they're really worth it. So all things to consider. A little bit about saddle pads today. Eventually you're going to put a saddle on your horse if you don't already ride. So a few things you need to know. Don't try using a quick fix with a shims. Get a saddle that fits properly, and take into consideration that the material it's made out of changes whether or not the horse is going to be cool and whether or not it's going to breathe, and the thickness is going to significantly affect the fit of your saddle. So don't think that just by putting a thicker, softer one on, you're actually going to be nice to your horse, because you might not be. Okay, have a good day, folks, and do a little research on your own, find out a little bit more, but this is a good start. Stick to the felts. The more natural fabric, the better it's going to breathe, and don't ever forget that the thickness of your pad changes the fit of your saddle. Have a good day, folks.